Millfield, Kansas, February 1931. A sepia porch photograph captures widowed farm wife Ruth Hartwell in threadbare Sunday clothes, cradling a dark-haired boy whose rigid arms and unsettlingly adult gaze jar against her obvious maternal warmth. County ledgers confirm Ruth's only son, 8-year-old James Hartwell, succumbed to pneumonia just 2 weeks earlier. Yet no records exist for any foster, orphan, or adoption placement on the farm that spring. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. The photograph first emerged from obscurity in the climate-controlled archives of the Kansas Historical Society. Dr. Annabelle Wright, head archivist and specialist in Depression-era rural documentation, discovered the image while cataloging donations from the Hartwell family estate. The yellowed print measuring 4 by 6 inches showed visible foxing around the edges. Wright noted the unusual composition immediately. The woman identified as Ruth Hartwell from census records stood stiffly on her farmhouse porch, wearing what appeared to be her church clothes, despite visible patches at the elbows. Her face conveyed a strange mixture of tenderness and apprehension as she held the dark-haired boy. Wright consulted regional birth and death certificates spanning 1890 through 1935. The records confirmed Ruth had lost her husband Thomas to a farming accident in 1929, and her only child James to pneumonia in early February 1931. No adoption papers existed in county files. No orphanage placements mentioned the Hartwell farm as a destination for wards of the state. The mystery deepened when Wright discovered handwritten notes in the church register describing concerned neighbors avoiding the Hartwell property that spring after spotting a strange child they called Thomas Jr. The photograph itself contained troubling anomalies that Wright could not explain using standard archival methods. The boy appeared unnaturally rigid despite Ruth attempting to pose him naturally against her side. His face showed wrinkles around the eyes and mouth that seemed impossible for a child. Most disturbing was his gaze, direct and penetrating with an unmistakable adult awareness that contradicted his small stature and childish clothing. Ruth herself looked simultaneously protective and wary. Her left hand splayed across his shoulder in what might have been restraint rather than comfort. But what the archives would reveal next would forever change how historians understood the Hartwell family tragedy. Wright expanded her investigation to neighboring counties and institutions. Depression-era America presented a landscape of desperate circumstances for parentless children. Orphanages overflowed with abandoned children whose families could no longer afford to feed them. State hospitals housed those with physical and mental conditions beyond the capabilities of early 20th century medicine. The winter of 1931 had been particularly severe across the Midwest. Records showed 27% of rural Kansas families lost at least one member to illness or starvation. The Hartwells had been more fortunate than most until young James contracted pneumonia after falling through pond ice. Local newspaper articles described Ruth as a woman of exceptional kindness, who had often taken in neighbors during blizzards. The Millfield Methodist Church newsletter praised her charitable work with families suffering crop failures. Her husband Thomas had been equally respected before his death. Their son James had been their only child after 3 miscarriages left Ruth unable to bear more children. The community expressed profound sympathy when James died on February 3, 1931. The funeral attendance list included almost every family within 10 miles of the Hartwell farm. Wright discovered a second photograph in the donation box that provided crucial context. The image showed Ruth standing alone on the same porch wearing identical clothing down to a small tear visible in her right sleeve. The background shadows indicated the photograph had been taken within hours of the first image. This suggested the dark-haired boy had not been present when the photographer initially arrived. The church newsletter mentioned itinerant photographers traveling through rural communities offering portraits for 25 cents during that period. Most families could not afford such luxuries during the Depression, unless commemorating significant events. The Historical Society records contained fragmentary journal entries from Ruth dated February 1931. Her handwriting showed clear signs of emotional distress. She wrote of sleepless nights hearing sounds from James's empty bedroom. She mentioned praying for guidance and forgiveness. One particularly cryptic entry from February 20th read only, "He arrived today, looking for food. The resemblance nearly stopped my heart. God has sent me another chance." The Lord works in mysterious ways. Modern technology was about to peel back layers of deception preserved for almost a century. Dr. Margaret Chen, Chief of Photopreservation at the Smithsonian Institution, received the Hartwell photographs in 2023 as part of a national digitization project documenting rural life during the Great Depression. Chen employed advanced digital scanning technology capable of capturing details invisible to the naked eye. Her team created ultra-high-resolution images revealing the photograph's deepest secrets. The microscopic analysis exposed subtle inconsistencies in the photograph's grain structure surrounding the boy's face and hands. The emulsion showed signs of careful manipulation using techniques barely possible with 1930s darkroom technology. Chen consulted with forensic photography experts from the FBI Historical Division. Their conclusion proved startling. Someone had attempted to composite two images together, the solitary Ruth and a separate photograph of the dark-haired boy. The technical skill required exceeded what most professional photographers could achieve in that era. The compositing showed deliberate attempts to soften harsh transitions between the subjects, yet the manipulation could not disguise fundamental inconsistencies in lighting and perspective that modern technology easily detected. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Chen discovered a third photograph hidden behind the cardboard backing of the second image. This previously unknown photograph showed Ruth with a smiling, fair-haired boy, unmistakably matching census descriptions of her son James. The date stamp showed it had been taken 1 week before his death. The contrast between the healthy biological son and the disturbing dark-haired replacement could not have been more stark. James appeared cheerful and physically normal. The mysterious replacement displayed subtle but unmistakable physical anomalies, consistent with accelerated aging. Chen submitted the digitized images to Dr. Raymond Hastings at Johns Hopkins Medical School. Hastings specialized in rare genetic disorders affecting physical development. His analysis identified characteristic facial features associated with progeria, an extremely rare condition causing children to age prematurely. The condition remained poorly understood until the 1950s and would have appeared supernatural to rural communities in 1931. Most children with progeria developed the appearance of elderly adults while still very young. Few lived beyond their early teens. The secret hidden for nearly a century was finally emerging from historical obscurity. Dr. Chen expanded her investigation to medical institutions operating in neighboring states during the Depression. Nebraska State Hospital records revealed a patient named Timothy Walsh admitted in 1928 at age 7. The admitting physician described him as displaying the appearance of a man 5 times his age due to unknown medical causes. Staff notes characterized Timothy as unnaturally perceptive and manipulative. He reportedly demonstrated an ability to read adult emotions with uncanny accuracy. The child escaped the facility during budget cuts that reduced security staff in February 1931. His whereabouts remained unknown until a notation in September of that year listed him as deceased, cause unspecified. Timothy's institutional photographs matched the dark-haired boy in Ruth's porch image with complete certainty. The medical records indicated his condition had accelerated dramatically in the months before his escape. His skin had developed deep wrinkles. His hair had thinned significantly. Most disturbing were notes about his psychological development. Timothy displayed cognitive abilities far beyond his years, combined with emotional manipulation that frightened even experienced staff. The final evaluation before his escape warned that he should not be placed with vulnerable individuals due to his dangerous influence over adults who pitied his condition. Chen collaborated with Dr. Simon Reeves from the University of Kansas Anthropology Department to investigate the Hartwell farm property now owned by the Historical Society. Ground-penetrating radar scans behind the dilapidated barn revealed a disturbing discovery. 4 feet below the surface lay a crude handmade coffin approximately 4 feet in length. County authorities granted permission for archaeological excavation under historical research protocols. The coffin contained juvenile human remains with highly unusual characteristics. The bones showed advanced density consistent with accelerated aging. The dentition displayed fully formed adult teeth alongside smaller children's teeth. DNA analysis confirmed the remains belonged to a male child related to the Walsh family whose descendants still lived in Nebraska. The forensic examination estimated the child had died at approximately age 10 from causes consistent with advanced progeria. Most significantly, soil analysis indicated burial occurred in late summer 1931, exactly when local oral histories reported the mysterious Thomas Jr. disappeared from the Hartwell farm. No death certificate had ever been filed, no funeral announced. The boy had simply vanished from community awareness. But what the investigators discovered in the Hartwell family Bible would reshape the entire narrative surrounding Ruth and the mysterious child. Eleonora Hartwell, grandniece of Ruth and family historian, provided researchers with personal journals her great-aunt had kept hidden inside a hollowed section of the family Bible. The meticulous entries documented Ruth's private thoughts following her son's death. Her grief had manifested in sleepless nights wandering the farmhouse. On February 20th, she discovered Timothy Walsh collapsed from exhaustion and malnutrition in her barn. His physical appearance initially terrified her. His adult-like features and prematurely aged skin seemed unnatural, yet his desperate circumstances awakened her maternal instincts, despite her fear. The journals revealed Ruth recognized Timothy suffered from a medical condition rather than supernatural affliction. Her husband Thomas had briefly worked as an orderly at a medical college before returning to farming. The medical texts he brought home had included rare cases of children aging prematurely. Ruth understood Timothy had escaped institutional care, where he had been treated as a curiosity rather than a child. She made the fateful decision to shelter him temporarily while determining how to help him properly. She created a fictional identity as Thomas Jr., claiming he was a distant relation sent to help with farm chores. Local response proved immediately hostile. Neighbors reported livestock growing panicked when Timothy approached their pens. Children refused to play with the strange boy who spoke like an adult. Church members whispered about ungodly afflictions and divine punishment. Within weeks, Ruth found herself increasingly isolated from the community that had previously supported her through personal tragedy. The traveling photographer who captured their image spread rumors about the disturbing child when visiting neighboring towns. Ruth convinced him to photograph her alone as well, to avoid arousing further suspicion. Modern forensic analysis revealed the most tragic chapter in Timothy's brief life. The journal entries from August 1931 documented Timothy's rapidly deteriorating health. His progeria accelerated dramatically during the summer months. Ruth described his increasing physical pain and respiratory difficulties. Rural doctors refused to treat the boy after one horrified house call. The local pharmacist denied Ruth access to pain relief medications after hearing descriptions of the child's appearance. Timothy reportedly told Ruth he knew his death approached and expressed gratitude for her kindness during his final months. On August 27th, he passed away in the small bedroom that had belonged to James. Ruth faced an impossible situation in the superstitious environment of Depression-era rural Kansas. Authorities would question why she harbored a runaway institutional patient. Neighbors already suspicious of Timothy might demand examination of his remains. Some might even suggest Ruth had somehow caused his death. The journal described her agonizing decision to bury Timothy secretly behind the barn rather than risk having his body subjected to posthumous indignities. She performed a private funeral service using her family Bible. She marked the grave with stones arranged in a cross pattern. The investigation concluded Ruth Hartwell had acted out of compassion rather than malice. Her decision to shelter a dying child with a frightening medical condition demonstrated remarkable courage during an era of widespread ignorance about genetic disorders. The photograph, once viewed as disturbing evidence of supernatural events, transformed into a powerful testament to human kindness. Ruth had provided Timothy with genuine care during his final months after a lifetime of being treated as a medical curiosity. The rigid posture and adult gaze that seemed so unsettling actually documented a child suffering from a condition that would not be properly understood for decades. The discoveries radically transformed public understanding of both Ruth and Timothy. The Kansas Historical Society established a special exhibition featuring the Hartwell photographs, alongside educational materials about progeria. Medical historians cited the case as an early example of compassionate home care for individuals with rare genetic conditions. The Nebraska State Hospital issued a formal acknowledgement of historical mistreatment of patients with unusual medical conditions. Timothy Walsh received a proper memorial marker beside his previously unmarked grave on what had been the Hartwell property. His surviving family members expressed gratitude for learning the truth about their relative after generations of uncertainty. Ruth Hartwell posthumously received recognition from the Kansas Medical Historical Association for her enlightened approach to a condition poorly understood in her time. Her journals became valuable resources for understanding rural responses to medical anomalies during the Depression era. Researchers noted her extraordinary willingness to overcome her own fear and community pressure to provide humane care for a child others had rejected. The original photograph took its place in medical history collections as visual documentation of a rare genetic disorder at a time when such conditions remained mysterious and frightening. Facial recognition technology applied to the digitized photograph revealed subtle emotional cues previous generations had misinterpreted. What appeared to be fear in Ruth's expression actually showed protective determination. The apparent rigidity in Timothy's posture reflected physical discomfort rather than supernatural presence. The adult-like gaze that disturbed early viewers demonstrated the cognitive awareness typical of progeria patients whose mental development continued normally while their bodies aged prematurely. The image transformed from macabre curiosity to poignant documentation of human compassion, transcending fear and superstition. The final entry in Ruth's journal, dated September 1, 1931, provided the most revealing insight into her character. She wrote of dreams where James and Timothy played together as normal children freed from illness and affliction. She expressed hope that future generations would understand diseases currently beyond medical comprehension. She acknowledged her community would never know the truth about the strange boy who briefly lived on her farm. Her closing words read, "Some will call what I did a sin for harboring the child and burying him without ceremony. Perhaps they are right according to the letter of earthly law, but I cannot believe the God who made us all would condemn showing kindness to one of his most vulnerable children. If that be sin, then I will answer for it gladly when my time comes." Ruth Hartwell died in 1948, never knowing science would eventually vindicate her compassionate choice and transform a photograph once viewed with fear into evidence of remarkable human kindness during one of American history's darkest periods. The image, originally interpreted as disturbing proof of supernatural presence, had become something far more powerful, testament to the capacity for compassion that transcends ignorance and fear, even in the most desperate times. Ruth and Timothy's brief connection across the boundaries of normal experience provided a lesson in humanity that would resonate nearly a century after their lives briefly intersected on a Kansas farm during the depths of the Great Depression.